I'm going to tell you the most hopeful story I know. It's a story about the place where Joe Biden went today, the place where Joe Biden was applauded by grateful people from around the world. It's a dangerous place. That is the title of Daniel Patrick Moynihan's book about his service as ambassador to the United Nations in the 1970s before New York voters elected him to 4 terms in the United States Senate, where I went to work for him in the 1990s. The title, A Dangerous Place, referred to the world and the place where the world began to gather after World War II to prevent another world war, the United Nations. Ambassador Moynihan served at the United Nations at the height of the Cold War when the United States and the Soviet Union had nuclear missiles aimed at each other, ready for launch in seconds. The nuclear threat did not appear to soften Ambassador Moynihan's language about the Soviet Union's imperialistic dictatorship. Many years later, he discovered the power of those harsh words. It was actually my first time visiting the news division in the building where I now work. I was staffing Senator Moynihan for an appearance on the Today Show. It was not long after the collapse of the Soviet Union, something no one in the CIA or the American government had predicted, except Senator Moynihan. In 1979, Senator Moynihan said the Soviet Union was economically and socially unsustainable. It could blow up, he said. A dozen years later, it did. Across the large green room full of breakfast snacks and coffee at the Today Show was the new Russian delegation to the United Nations, the post-Soviet delegation. The Russian ambassador was scheduled to appear on the Today Show after Senator Moynihan. What happened in that room that morning changed my understanding of the possible. It changed my understanding of the world. And it changed the way I listened to President Biden's final words to the United Nations today. In our corner of that room, Senator Moynihan was whispering to me about the Russians he recognized from almost 20 years ago at the United Nations. He was pointing out the ones he thought maybe were KGB agents then. A producer entered to lead the senator to the set as Senator Moynihan took his first step out of the room with me trailing him in the doorway. A rough-voiced Russian man who was one of the suspected former KGB agents came rushing up behind me, saying something that sounded like Russian over my shoulder to the senator. We turned. He said it again. It wasn't Russian. It was heavily accented English. We still didn't understand it. It was in the middle of the third time he said it, that I noticed how big his smile was, how admiringly he was looking up at Senator Moynihan, who towered over both of us. Suddenly, the heavily accented words made sense to both of us, and the senator's face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen on him. The Russian, possibly former KGB guy, was saying, "We were listening." Senator Moynihan looked near tears of joy. I had never seen him so thrilled, or even slightly thrilled for that matter. We both said thank you to the Russian a couple of times. He beamed one more, "We were listening," and the senator then had to fly onto the Today Show set. We were listening, meaning when you stood up in what seemed like the most hopeless and ineffectual protests against what the Soviet Union was doing, the Soviet Union was listening. Some of us were listening. We were listening. It was a validation of Daniel Patrick Moynihan's life's work, first as a teacher, a Harvard professor, trying to impart important knowledge without ever really knowing if those kids are really listening. Then as ambassador to India before becoming ambassador to the United Nations, then as a senator. We were listening was all the professor, ambassador, senator was ever hoping for. That's the first thing, the most important thing, the necessary thing. Listening. Because if they are listening, maybe we can solve this problem. Maybe we can solve the biggest problems. Maybe we can end wars. Maybe we can save lives. Maybe we can make a dangerous place less dangerous. The Soviet Union existed for Daniel Patrick Moynihan's entire lifetime before it collapsed. The Berlin Wall existed for my entire lifetime before it collapsed. People were shot dead in their tracks for almost 50 years for trying to cross the Berlin Wall and escape the Soviet-controlled dictatorship of East Germany. People got executed on the spot trying to climb that wall because that wall coming down was unimaginable. No one dared to hope that that wall would come down. People died trying to climb that wall because they believed it would never come down. The Berlin Wall was permanent, and UN ambassadors like Moynihan would protest it, but nothing would happen. But something was happening. They were listening. No one knew they were listening. Unfortunately, you usually have to be old to know that things can change, to know that the hopeless can turn hopeful. The World War II generation knew this. The Vietnam generation learned this. And so when we look at our most hopeless problems in the world today, the ones where it feels like we are making absolutely no progress month after month, sometimes year after year, we should know that those problems aren't more hopeless than the Berlin Wall was. They aren't more hopeless than the Vietnam War was. So now when you listen to an old man who has seen it all give his last speech today to the United Nations, you might want to try listening to him the way I do, with an understanding of how he learned to be hopeful. I listened to him today with the hope that I earned in that green room at the Today Show 30 years ago. The hope, just the hope, that they are listening. The hope that people on opposite sides of the issues at the United Nations and elsewhere are listening, and that someday they will find each other. And maybe, just maybe, because they were listening, they will find a way to end wars, to save lives.
My fellow leaders, today is the fourth time I've had the great honor of speaking to this assembly as President of the United States. It'll be my last. I've seen a remarkable sweep of history. I was first elected to office in the United States of America as a U.S. Senator in 1972. Now, I know I look like I'm only 40. I know that. I was 29 years old. Back then, we were living through an inflection point, a moment of tension and uncertainty. The world was divided by the Cold War. The Middle East was headed toward war. America was at war in Vietnam. At that point, the longest war in America's history. Our country was divided and angry, and there were questions about our staying power and our future. But even then, I entered public life not out of despair, but out of optimism. The United States and the world got through that moment. It wasn't easy or simple without significant setbacks. But we go on to reduce the threat of nuclear weapons through arms control, and then go on to bring the Cold War itself to an end. Israel and Egypt went to war, but then forged a historic peace. We ended the war in Vietnam. The last year in Hanoi, I met with the Vietnamese leadership. We elevated our partnership to the highest level. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for reconciliation. That today the United States and Vietnam are partners and friends, and it's proof that even from the horrors of war, there's a way forward. Things can get better. We should never forget that. I've seen that throughout my career. In the 1980s, I spoke out against apartheid in South Africa. And then I watched the racist regime fall. When I came to office as president, Afghanistan had replaced Vietnam as America's longest war. I was determined to end it, and I did. It was a hard decision, but the right decision. 4 American presidents had faced that decision, but I was determined not to leave it to the 5th. It was a decision accompanied by tragedy. 13 brave Americans lost their lives, along with hundreds of Afghans in a suicide bomb. I think those lost lives, I think of them every day. I think of all the 2,461 U.S. military deaths over a long 20 years of that war. 20,744 American servicemen wounded in action. I think of their service, their sacrifice, and their heroism. I know many look at the world today and see difficulties and react with despair, but I do not. I won't. As leaders, we don't have the luxury. I recognize the challenges from Ukraine to Gaza to Sudan and beyond. War, hunger, terrorism, brutality, record displacement of people, a climate crisis, democracy at risk, strains within our societies, the promise of artificial intelligence and its significant risk. The list goes on. But maybe because all I've seen and all we have done together over the decades, I have hope. I know there is a way forward. There will always be forces that pull our countries apart and the world apart. Aggression, extremism, chaos, and cynicism. A desire to retreat from the world and go it alone. To start, each of us in this body has made a commitment to the principles of the UN Charter, to stand up against aggression. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we could have stood by and merely protested. But Vice President Harris and I understood that that was an assault on everything this institution is supposed to stand for. We cannot grow weary. We cannot look away. And we will not let up on our support for Ukraine. Not until Ukraine wins a just and durable peace in the UN Charter. Thousands of armed Hamas terrorists invaded a sovereign state, slaughtering and massacring more than 1,200 people, including 46 Americans, in their homes and at a music festival. Despicable acts of sexual violence, 250 innocents taken hostage. I've met with the families of those hostages. I've grieved with them. They're going through hell. Innocent civilians in Gaza are also going through hell. Thousands and thousands killed, including aid workers. Too many families dislocated, crowding into tents, facing a dire humanitarian situation. They did not ask for this war that Hamas started. I put forward with Qatar and Egypt a ceasefire and hostage deal. It's been endorsed by the UN Security Council. Now is the time for the parties to finalize its terms, bring the hostages home, and secure security for Israel and Gaza free of Hamas' grip, ease the suffering in Gaza, and end this war. On October 7th, as we look ahead, we must also address the rise of violence against innocent Palestinians on the West Bank and set the conditions for a better future, including a two-state solution where the world, where Israel enjoys security and peace and full recognition and normalized relations with all its neighbors, where Palestinians live in security, dignity, and self-determination in a state of their own. Gaza is not the only conflict that deserves our outrage. In Sudan, a bloody civil war unleashed one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. 8 million on the brink of famine. Hundreds of thousands already there. Atrocities in Darfur and elsewhere. The United States has led the world in providing humanitarian aid to Sudan, and with our partners, we've led diplomatic talks to try to silence the guns and avert a wider famine. The world needs to stop arming the generals, to speak with one voice and tell them, stop tearing your country apart, stop blocking aid to the Sudanese people, end this war now. The UN needs to adapt and bring new voices and new perspectives. That's why we support reforming and expanding the membership of the UN Security Council. We the people. These are the first words of our Constitution, the very idea of America. They inspired the opening words of the UN Charter. I made the preservation of democracy the central cause of my presidency. This summer, I faced a decision whether to seek a second term as president. It was a difficult decision. Being president has been the honor of my life. There's so much more I want to get done. As much as I love the job, I love my country more. I decided after 50 years of public service, it's time for a new generation of leadership to take my nation forward. My fellow leaders, let us never forget, some things are more important than staying in power. It's your people. It's your people that matter the most. That's the soul of democracy. It does not belong to any one country. I've seen it all around the world, and the brave men and women who ended apartheid, brought down the Berlin Wall, fight today for freedom and justice and dignity. Nelson Mandela taught us, and I quote, "It always seems impossible until it's done." It always seems impossible until it's done. My fellow leaders, there's nothing that's beyond our capacity if we work together. Let's work together. God bless you all, and may God protect all those who seek peace. Thank you.